Man, oh man.
Hey, good morning. Sorry we're late. This is actually on me this time and not Jordan Klein sleeping in. I have to get a betting video out before this over on the Odd Shopper channel, and sometimes it takes a while. So my sincerest apologies. You can hear it in my voice, I'm sure. But anyway, welcome to the Stochastic.com NFL Showdown Strategy Show. Woo, yeah. We got Matt Gajewski with me, as always. And I've got to say, Matt, we've seen some bad primetime games, and I'm sure we will going forward. Matter of fact, I already looked at next week's games. They're pretty sick again. But how nice were these? I mean, final drive between Kansas City, Baltimore, crazy finish with the Isaiah Likely non-touchdown. Eagles, Packers down to the final drive, high scoring game in Brazil. Last night, overtime between the Lions and the Rams, another great game, 14-point comeback for the Rams. Actually, no, I think they scored 17 unanswered, and then the Lions kicked the field goal to go to. Now we got Aaron Rodgers and the Jets against the Niners on Monday Night Football. This has been a great week of primetime games, dude.
Yeah, it has. It's been a great week of football in general. The main slate yesterday was a little bit gross, but a lot of the games came in down to the wire or were within a single score at the end, only a few blowouts. So it's been a really exciting week of football. And then on the primetime stuff where you get the absolute stars of the game like Lamar, Mahomes, tonight, Rodgers, Purdy, McCaffrey. That's exactly how you draw it up. So it's been awesome for viewing. It's been awesome for DFS.
Well, happy to have you guys with us. Appreciate your patience. If you don't mind, I'll atone for my sins right now and hit that thumbs up. But Matt, I would ask politely that you do the same. Hammer that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. It goes a long way, and we're greatly appreciative for all of your support here. Also, leave a comment down below. Where are you at for tonight's game? I read and respond to all of them every single time. Yeah. Nick said Sam Darnold, comeback player of the year. Yeah, I did not expect any of that yesterday, dude.
That award always confuses me. Are we permitting people that just suck to win it? Like, what are you coming back from being bad?
That's true.
So, like, maybe you're coming back from being in like bad situations. Like Sam Darnold in his career, could we say he's coming back from atrocious coaching?
I mean, I think it counts, right?
Like, these awards are so fluid. I don't know what counts and what doesn't count. In my head, coming back means like something you couldn't control, like an injury or something.
But no, last year Joe Flacco got it.
Yeah, he shouldn't have got it, in my opinion. Like, what is he coming back from? He just sucked
stop
before.
it. Yes, you can't tell me that someone like DeMar Hamlin should have gotten it over Joe Flacco. DeMar Hamlin, if he got that,
you have to play too.
Well, yeah. DeMar Hamlin was like minus 400 before the season even started, and the guy was a backup.
Yeah, I mean, he shouldn't qualify either because he technically didn't come back. He didn't play before and he didn't play after.
Right, that's true. I don't know, man. I see what you're saying, but then the problem is you have such limited options. Like, I haven't looked at anything, but my guess is that the odds on, like, it has to be Aaron Rodgers, right? Right now.
Yeah, probably. I would guess so. I can't remember who was injured coming into last year, so I just haven't thought about this in a while. Generally, I don't like betting this market, obviously, because it's just so whimsical.
Whimsical. Yeah, it is. It is. It's stupid. I didn't bet it either, but I bet it's got to be Aaron Rodgers. I haven't looked either. Anyway, oh, here we go. Awards. Let's see. Comeback player of the year. Aaron Rodgers plus 125. Joe Burrow plus 500. Richardson plus 650. Darnold plus 750. There's actually a lot of guys that were out last year. You're right. Burrow, Rodgers, Richardson, Chubb.
See, Trey in the chat says should win most improved player. That's the perfect award for Darnold.
Yes. It's also like such an insulting title of an award, most improved player. You know, it feels like something the kid in the 8-year-old soccer team with an intramural soccer team would get. You know what I mean? Like, Billy, you did really great this year and you've come a long way. I I don't know if I'd want to win most improved player in the NFL.
Yeah, I don't know if I would either.
All right, let's get into it. Let's talk Jets, Niners. So we'll start with the Jets. I want to bring and toss it over to you. They're 4-point dogs. Full disclosure, I bet the Jets in this game. But this is a team. Okay, we'll talk offensively because we'll get to the Jets defense when we talk about the Niners offense. But Niners have a great secondary. We know that. They have a great defensive line. Both of these teams are stacked across the board. The thing about the Jets that is more intriguing to me, maybe even than Aaron Rodgers, is the fact that they had a terrible offensive line last year. Elijah Vera Tucker was out. They had problems from left to right all season long, and also a terrible quarterback that couldn't even sense pressure coming. But now you bring in Morgan Moses, you have Elijah Vera Tucker back, and you have Tyron Smith. Like, this could go from one of the worst to one of the best offensive lines in football this year. You have Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, Mike Williams, who likely limited, hasn't played in a while, Ty Conklin, Alan Lazard, whatever. But what if this offensive line really lives up to the hype, Matt? They've got some big names on this line.
Yeah, I think their line is maybe one of the most improved units in the entire NFL.
Agreed.
You didn't even mention their first round pick, Olu Fashanu, who's probably not going to play for this team unless there's an injury. They're absolutely loaded. They loaded. I don't think there's any way around it. This is probably a top 5 unit in the NFL. And if you think that's being generous, it's no less than a top 10 unit. Just bringing in the names they did, returning some from injury, and then adding a bookend like Fashanu, who should be ideally one of your tackles for the foreseeable future when he actually gets on the field. And it's nice they can actually develop him. Not to mention, like, Conklin's a pretty good blocker for a tight end. He's very underrated, in my opinion, for what he gives your offense. Maybe not the best fantasy performer, but he does a lot in real life football.
Man, imagine on defense if Reddick wasn't holding out. Like, this team is so loaded across the board at every position.
Yeah, I don't know what Reddick's doing, man.
I know. Yeah, you're not in Philly anymore, and now I don't know. I don't know if it's going to end well for him. Either way, it's kind of tough. It's not tough to talk about offense in this game, but it is one of those spots where you have really great players and all of them in pretty awful matchups. Garrett Wilson, though, what if Garrett Wilson, and this is what I keep coming back to, what if Garrett Wilson starts seeing volume that guys like Devontae Adams and Jordy Nelson saw when Aaron Rodgers was the quarterback? Because listen, he had 1,000+ yards in each of his first 2 seasons. And you want to be like, yeah, but 7, I don't care. He had Zach Wilson. These were his quarterbacks. Zach Wilson, Tim Boyle, Mike White, Trevor Siemian, and then like a game or 2 from Joe Flacco and 4 snaps from Rodgers. And Matt, he put up 1,000+ yards with busted up offensive lines in both of those seasons. That's pretty remarkable, playing with what I would say is the worst collection of quarterbacks over a 2-year span that any team could field.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's actually an accomplishment as well. And 1,000 yards, even if it's 17 games, is still pretty noteworthy for just about any receiver. But if that gives you pause, look at the underlying metrics. 29.9% target share, basically 30%. There's a little more competition this year, but most of it is pretty old. And I think you could poke holes in every single person that Garrett Wilson will be competing for targets with. And he's an absolute monster when he's on the field. 45% of the air yards, 35% of the red zone targets. I mean, there's nothing to say negatively about Garrett Wilson. And now that you can actually upgrade the quarterback, it's wheels up for him this year.
What do you think about him tonight?
I have absolutely no issues with him tonight. If I were to poke holes in the San Francisco defense, it's certainly on the back end. I think their front 7 is very, very good, but there's some players in the secondary that I think you could definitely take advantage of. You know, like Charvarius Ward is pretty good, but Isaac Yiadom and Diamador Lenoir, I don't really think are all that good at football. I mean, Hufanga's not going to play in this game, so the secondary is a little weaker. You just hope that offensive line puts it all together right away in the first game, because the defensive line is really good.
For sure. And again, you know, we're going to run into the same thing. Every time you and I talk about a player, there's going to be the caveat of like, yeah, well, really horrible matchup. Here's a fun question for you. Do you think there is one, like if you had to, and it could be anybody, right? It could be Ty Conklin or Alan Lazard. Do you think there is one great matchup or far and away better matchup than the others for either team in this game?
I think the best matchups are trying to target the secondaries.
Me
And
too.
I think it's a little easier on the New York side. The San Francisco secondary, I think, is just a little bit weaker. When you look at the Jets secondary, you still have like Sauce Gardner. Uh, he's really like the bookend guy there. But I mean, up front for both these teams, we're talking absolute studs. Like Quinnen Williams is perhaps the best defensive tackle in football now that Aaron Donald's retired. You have Kinlaw, Johnson there. The San Francisco defensive line is just as good, highlighted by Bosa, and their front seven's excellent. So while there's like a name or two in each of the secondaries that I think you'd be a little fearful of, primarily Sauce, I still think that's probably the easiest path to victory for both teams.
So do I. And boy, is it gross. Like
Yeah,
it's
two excellent defenses.
really good. Uh, that's why for me, it's kind of all right. So I look at this in one of two ways. One, I look at it as okay, where can I find the volume? And then two, I go, all right, since it's such a difficult matchup pretty much everywhere, where can I find some of the cheap options? Because maybe like these mid-range guys just don't offer us what we're looking for. I mean, Mike Williams at that price, I think could be difficult to get to. Are there cheap options here on either? I mean, do you think Xavier Gibson plays a role? Also, I will say this much: guy is he still returning kicks for them? I hope so.
Yeah, he should be. Watch the inactives for the Jets because they have like, I don't know, they do weird things. I would expect it to be Gibson and Malachi Corley rounding out the receiver room. I don't think they keep six active, but that's who I'm anticipating right now, with Gibson being mainly a special teamer.
Agreed. But also, I'm not convinced at all that like if okay, so I'm not if you were to use one of the this is why I say this, because if Mike Williams is in fact limited, right, and we don't see him out there for the boat, like I would expect Garrett Wilson to be out there the entire game for the most part. Do you agree?
Yeah.
Okay. And I would think that Alan Lazard is out there for, a good chunk of this game as well. Last year, Garrett Wilson was legitimately playing 90 to 100% of snaps every single game. Lazard was a little bit more back and forth, but played a lot. Malachi Corley is a rookie. I know they like him, but I think actually Gibson would be the guy over Corley that I'd be looking to get to. And the reason for that is that with these new kickoff rules, we've seen a lot of big returns yesterday. There's potential there. I don't actually mind targeting some special teamers who could also get on the field for a reception or two, maybe some, gadget type plays. He's not that much more expensive than Corley. Gibson's one of the cheap guys that I'd actually look towards because he has that special teams upside. Week 1 last year, I think it was Monday Night Football when Aaron Rodgers got hurt. It was the 9/11 game. Gibson had that big run back for a touchdown.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I truly don't know how snaps are going to shake out for this Jets team with all the uncertainty. And I think if he's active, which he very well should be, that's the first step to getting on the field. And we've seen the Jets rotate quite a bit. And aside from Garrett Wilson, you have an aging Mike Williams off the knee injury. Alan Lazard is a veteran. He's steady, but I don't think he's somebody you'd prefer to play 90% of the snaps. Corley's a gadget rookie player at this point in his career. Hopefully he can develop into something more than that. You got to fill out some snaps somewhere. And Gibson has been reliable enough to play offensive snaps. And you bring up good points with the special teams. I don't hate him either. If we're targeting someone really cheap from the Jets, I think the safest option is Lazard, but I also think he comes with the most ownership at 2K. It's either him or Conklin. Like if you have the extra 1.2K to get up to Conklin or 3.6K, if you can get up there from Lazard, I think he'll be somewhat owned too. But the second we start talking about Corley and Gibson, I think you're shaving off a lot of ownership.
Agreed. I actually, for what it's worth, I like Conklin above any of those guys. But if I'm talking between Gibson and Corley, for me, it would actually would be Xavier Gibson. I wouldn't be surprised if Corley sees very limited playing time tonight, if any.
Do you prefer Gibson to Lazard?
I might.
I agree with you on Corley for what it's worth. With Aaron Rodgers too, the guy who's
I know.
as
Oh wait,
notorious.
I'm sorry. I had the price point wrong on Alan Lazard. No. Alan Lazard. Oh, I didn't know Lazard was 400 cheaper than Gibson. No,
Yeah, I was surprised. He's got a shocking price tag.
I don't understand that. But here's what I would say. Looking at ownership, where is Alan Lazard at? Hold on a second. Let me pull this up. Do you have it? Because Alan Lazard has to be exponentially more owned than Gibson, right? Or am I crazy here?
He's not that owned in our projections.
At 2K?
He's negatively leveraged for us, which is a surprise.
Huh. Gibson, we have only at 8% utility. We have Lazard at 18. So that's a big jump from one to the other. But it's still 8.6 for Gibson, so 2 times the ownership. But it's still less than I would have thought on Lazard.
Well,
so I guess the question then becomes, what are these builds going to look like for people if they're not getting to a ton of Lazard and Gibson? Probably a decent amount of kickers, which makes sense in a game like this with 2 good defenses. I think kickers make for great plays today. You mentioned Ty Conklin. That's a pretty obvious one. Like he'll be the chalkiest sub 4K guy by a mile if you're not including defenses, I think.
So I ran the Sims this morning. I got an absurd amount of kickers, to your point on that.
Yeah, me too.
But what I'll say to that, for tournaments especially, and we've been saying this all week, this is the least certain we're ever going to be on projections. There's a lot of questions with the roles in the Jets wide receiver room. If you just go to our projections, we definitely have this projected as a split, especially the wide receiver 3 position. When everyone's fully healthy, that's what Lazard should be playing. I still think at 2K, he's a player that can just be an avenue to getting you studs as well. And there's not that many I'm really excited about, but I think he's probably the safest of those players. And that's assuming you can't get up to Conklin.
Do you think Corley's even going to be active?
Yeah, I would think so, but I wouldn't be shocked to see him come in inactive, but I do think he will be playing tonight.
Okay. Because, I mean, this is a guy that down the road could be good, but training camp, he was pretty inconsistent. I know you weren't doing DFS for preseason this year, so I don't know how much you paid attention to it, but I
played every slate.
Okay. All right. I should have known. From a betting perspective, I remember he played like the entire first half of 1 or 2 games. Like he was out there a lot in the preseason as well. So I think they still have the training wheels on this fella.
They should. I mean, I don't want to compare him to Sky Moore, but he went to a terrible school and all they did was throw him a million bubble screens. Mm-hmm. Like he has a ton of learning to do. He did nothing from an actual wide receiver standpoint in college, and he went to a horrific school. So this is a massive jump, just like it was for Sky Moore coming out of Western Michigan to the NFL. We got a guy coming from a gimmicky offense in college at Western Kentucky to the New York Jets playing with Aaron Rodgers. Like imagine the learning curve for this guy.
It's got to be insane.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's got to be nuts. And they've actually talked about that. I was reading reports out of New York. There was some of that happening for sure. Speaking of rookies, I was listening to your live before lock yesterday when I was building lineups after my deeper dive show. And, I had talked up Malik Neighbors a lot. I heard you doing the same. I think both of us were on the same page, just the volume. What a disgrace Daniel Jones has become. Like, Neighbors had 5 for 66 is fine, but it's just remarkable how you can finally get that guy and still, I know it's only 1 week, but what a disgrace. Imagine Malik Neighbors going to a team that had a quality quarterback. The guy's putting up 100 yards every week.
Yeah, I mean, talk about a Garrett Wilson situation.
Yep. Yeah, pretty much.
So
Sucks.
listen to this. Plays to Malik Neighbors plus 4.1 EPA. All other Giants plays negative 20.7 EPA.
That cannot be right.
That is true.
Ugh. And he somehow only had 7 targets. Wan'Dale Robinson had 9.
Yeah, we're going to see Daniel Jones benched midway through the year at the latest if this continues.
You know, it's not the worst thing in the world, if we're being honest. Like, would you rather have Danny Jones at this point or Drew Lock? I would honestly rather have Drew Lock. At least Drew Lock isn't afraid to throw. Like, at least Drew Lock will target his man downfield.
Yeah, I don't know. They like kind of made their bed. Now they have to lay in it by signing Daniel Jones to any kind of contract. So it's like, I don't know. This regime has to bite the bullet and decide if they're willing to ride it out and be bad and maybe try to draft the future next time they get an opportunity to. I don't know what they're going to do, but they've just made a horrible decision. Now they have to live with it.
Crazy.
The troubling part is like everyone saw it coming from a mile away, going back to the NFL draft where he was wildly overdrafted.
Everyone saw it coming and they still paid him. And then, like Saquon Barkley leaves, puts up 3. I will never understand, by the way, all of the hate for Saquon Barkley coming in. I've never seen so many best ball people talking about how big of a disappointment he was going to be. It's like the Eagles don't sign running backs to big money. They never do. Miles Sanders, they let him go. They cut him loose. DeAndre Swift, like, you're going to use the guy. You're going to use him. But then people hate him because he decided that he wanted to get out of New York. That's just insane.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why you'd be hating a player really for any reason outside of off the field stuff.
No, I don't know. Either way, by the way, what I should point this out. We have 700 people watching with us right now, Matt, for a showdown strategy show.
That is much appreciated. Thank you all for being here. It truly means a lot that you would take some time out of your day to spend it with us. So thank you very much. Hopefully we get a great game.
It's a great game. Yeah. Hit that thumbs up too. Look, I don't usually say this for morning shows, but if we could rip this north to like 250 or something, that'd be awesome. Tone. Just a subtle reminder for those who forget, and we appreciate you. All right. So I think I don't know how we streamlined that process so well. I almost accidentally talking about this New York Jets team, but the only guy, and then we'll build a lineup too, because that's going to be important. There's one guy before we get to Breece Hall that I want to talk about, and of course Aaron Rodgers, but what about Mike Williams? Because I think I have the toughest time getting to Williams at that price point in a really tough matchup with him coming off a season-ending injury midway through last season.
He's one I'm a little uncertain on. Our tools certainly don't like him, but you're also gambling on just like health stuff. So I'm going to see where ownership comes in on him throughout the day. He was excellent in a very short sample last year before the injury. He was excellent before then. If people are not going to click his name just because of the injury, I think I might end up a little over the field, but I'm going to play this by ear and wait and see throughout the day. He's also tricky because he's not cheap. So that's going to be a factor as well.
That's the issue that I keep running into. So yes, you have an expensive Garrett Wilson, but also just it's hard to believe Garrett Wilson is not the clear number 1 in this offense, in the passing game, of course. I also, while I love Breece Hall, it's funny, this team, Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson have become 2 of my favorite players. And maybe it's because they made something out of absolute shit, the past couple of years, where most skill players wouldn't have been able to do that. So I'm legitimately pulling for these guys. But I don't anticipate Breece Hall seeing those, 12, 13, 10 target games of which we saw last year. We saw a bunch of 9 target games, a 16 target game. I think we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games of 9+ targets. With Aaron Rodgers at the helm and a bolstered offensive line, as much as I love Breece Hall, I don't think you're going to see as much passing volume go to him this year than we did last year.
I agree with that. I still think it'll be pretty good.
Me too.
Anytime you can get 9 targets, it's like, unless you're Alvin Kamara, it's pretty big outlier. But I think the efficiency that he'll see kind of makes up for that. You know, he was kind of being targeted 8, 9 times a game just because of overall inefficiency of the offense. And that led to less touchdowns, less yards per carry, like less overall efficiencies, less points. And now we're kind of trading out just the dumb targets that Zach Wilson would dump to him every single play for what we project to be more rushing lanes, more touchdowns, more trips to the end zone, more overall points, even in a tough matchup. I think he is the second best raw workload of any running back in the NFL behind only McCaffrey, which is crazy. These guys are playing each other. So I'm very, very enticed by Breece Hall, even at the elevated price point. I'm not really all that scared of the matchup. I think his volume is just going to be that good.
I love him as well. And my point was more towards, I think that Breece Hall's volume is going to be nuts this year, and it's going to be more efficient. What I was saying was more so like, I think you could see even more targets spread to your pass catchers because, because you don't need to dump it off to Breece Hall 9 times every game. But yeah, I love him. There's just, there's nobody behind him that you have to use either, right? Like, you don't have any running back behind Breece Hall that you should feel obligated to use. But okay, so at their respective price points, Breece Hall, 10-2 in the flex, Christian McCaffrey at 11-6. How much higher than Breece Hall do you have McCaffrey tonight?
We have it pretty considerable in projections. I think I would not have it that far, honestly.
I agree.
I don't think the roles are all that different aside from McCaffrey's more of a priority in the pass game. But would you be surprised if Breece Hall and McCaffrey have like almost the same touch count? But Breece, it's let's say they both have 25 touches. McCaffrey, it's like 18 carries, 7 catches. Breece Hall might be like 21 carries, 4 catches or something. That would not surprise me at all if it's very similar touch count, but McCaffrey just has a few more high value touches. So I honestly think I would make it narrower than where we have it.
Agreed. And both in bad matchups too, right? So it's not like one of them has a markedly better matchup either. So just, yeah, pretty. Also, Breece Hall, even coming off the injury last year, was good. Pre-injury 2 years ago was phenomenal. The breakaway speed, the breakaway touchdowns, we saw a lot before he got hurt. I remember it was that Packers game he got hurt, and he had like a 50-yard touchdown right before that. There's something to be said about just Breece Hall and the volume here. If you had to pay up for 3 guys, and let's say we can include quarterbacks here as well. Spoiler alert, I don't love the quarterbacks in this game nearly as much as I like the skill players. And I would actually be interested in building out a lineup with neither quarterback and seeing how it grades out in our single lineup sim. Who would your top 3 skill players be for this game?
McCaffrey, Breece Hall, and Garrett Wilson.
Me too. And I would assume for you, this is not a matchup thing, but a consolidated workload situation. Whereas in San Francisco, you have Debo, you have Ayuk, you have Kittle. You have a bunch of ways that they distribute the ball. It's not that Alan Lazard might not get anything or Mike Williams, but it feels like going into week 1, Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson are the clear 1 and 1A in whatever fashion from a workload standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's just from a raw workload perspective. The second you start talking about tournaments, I think you can introduce those players you just mentioned a little more.
Yep.
But from raw projection, who's likeliest to have the better games for fantasy, it's McCaffrey, Breece, and Garrett Wilson, I think.
What about the quarterbacks? We can touch on both of them here. Tough spot. It feels like a game. And you and I are usually pretty locked in on this stuff, right? We're usually over the target. We've done this enough by now. Doesn't it kind of feel like one of those games where you could have, a receiver on each side be optimal and maybe the running backs or one of the running backs, but then the quarterbacks not be necessary, especially given that they're like Rodgers is the furthest thing from, the definition of mobility. And while Brock Purdy might run once in a while, He might not be totally statuesque, but he's also not Lamar Jackson.
Absolutely. And the thing to really highlight here is just how condensed the target trees are. It's more condensed for New York, at least what we're projecting with Garrett Wilson. I think he probably has a similar target share to last year, the 30-ish%. Given his talent and the talent of the rest of this room, this is probably where he ends up. With San Francisco, it's a little more spread, but it's basically still the same guys you expect from last year. Mainly Ayuk, Debo, McCaffrey, and then Kittle mixes in too. The reason like Brock was so important last year and valuable was like his yards per attempt was off the charts. The efficiency was absolutely nuts with him. Playing one of the better defenses in the NFL, I'm not sure if it's quite there. So I think I would still rather gamble on the skill position players than take a shot on Brock Purdy himself, to your point. He's not going to run quite as much as some other signal callers. And I don't think his mobility is all that much better than Aaron Rodgers right now. Or at least he's not required to do it in the Shanahan offense. It's probably a lot better, but just doesn't do it a lot.
I'm with you. And by the way, guys, if you wanted to get all of our tools for tonight's game, that includes the single lineup sim or the actual pre-contest sim. The single lineup sim is where you can actually build your lineup out and get instant. Matt and I are going to use it in a second. It's just an incredible tool. We actually had a buddy, or not a buddy, one of our viewers took down 5K with it. I assume we'll have more screenshots rolling in, but took down 5K yesterday with a single lineup sim just in the first week of using it. So I bet there's a lot more out there, and we're going to start getting these Hall of Fame tweets for sure. But the single lineup sim where you can get instant feedback on all of your lineups that you build out yourself. It is the perfect combination, perfect synergy between someone who likes to build out lineups with them by hand. I know I do. Ben does. Matt, I know you like to as well sometimes. And then also getting that feedback through simming that lineup thousands of times with our Sims tools. So it's really cool. But also the pre-contest sim and the contest generator. Generate up to 1,000 lineups. Do it that way. One thing I love to do is I like to use that and then see what type of lineups look great. And then I actually start building some out myself in a single lineup sim. So I'm working with both of those, you know, to complement each other. You're also getting the top showdown and stacks tool that I think Matt and I have been using for like 7 years on this show now. It's been a while, man. The ownership, player projections, lineup generator, premium Discord. Come into our premium Discord, say what's up, join the community, and ask any questions you have. Everything for $1 tonight. You got a milli up top. Got big stuff on FanDuel across the industry. This is $1. So even if you're playing $5 tonight, you're spending $1 to make better lineups. I mean, our showdown tools have crushed in the past, and I anticipate the same being the case this year. So link in the description and in the chat. This is the last day we will have this promo running. So if you've missed out up until this point, last day, link in the description and chat, $1 for all of our NFL tools tonight for the core weekly package. And while you're at it, make sure to download the Stochastic Hall of Fame avatar, use it wherever it is you play, and get rewarded in huge ways. Just go to stochastic.com/HOF. That's it. Download one of them. There's 6 of them. If you finish top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more, boom, tweet your wins to us at Stochastic HOF and get rewarded huge. First time you win in a calendar year, $200 Sims package, anyone you want. Win again in a calendar year, get silver tier, $200 Sims package again, plus a week of any other sport. So like football, basketball, now you have both of them. Win for a third time, gold tier, $550 all access Sims, and get any win 20 plus K, Hall of Fame ring, baby, with your name in it, with the Stochastic avatar or logo in there, spinning display case with the plaque on front, your name, the win, the date, how much you won, what content, really cool stuff. So we got the best rewards program out there. Do yourself a favor, rock that avatar. So when you win even more. All right. So I think I'm actually not opposed to going defensive captain tonight. How crazy am I?
I don't think you're crazy. There's a lot of really expensive studs. So I think the sim tool is going to give you some of those lineups, not just from a leverage standpoint, but just because you're going to get lineups then that have more studs in the flex. So it's a different way to build. When I ran it this morning, I did get a little defense in the captain spot, but I want to see how this goes throughout the day. I think a lot of it will come down to ownership.
Yeah, good point. I still don't think defense is ever going to be that popular at captain. Like we have Jets, what, 1%? We have Niners 2%. I think I have a sneaky suspicion the Jets score a defensive touchdown today.
That would not surprise me. Biggest thing I look for with potentially forecasting defensive touchdowns, like the most volatile forecasting in the business,
Of course.
do you have a pass rush that can cause pressure and put the opposing offense in tricky situations where turnovers might arise? Both these defenses have that in different ways. San Francisco's largely going to work through Bosa. New York can disrupt from the interior with Quinn and Williams, but they both have very disruptive pass rushes.
They do. And also, if there's one weakness on this Niners team, outside of Trent Williams, this offensive line has some question marks. And Trent Williams just recently ended his holdout. So I know they said he won't be limited, but I don't even believe he was practicing. That isn't to say that on the side he wasn't doing work, but he wasn't at practice. What if this offensive line just doesn't hold up as well as we think it's going to against this Jets defensive line? That is one spot where I think you could actually run into some trouble if you're San Francisco's offense.
I think the weakest part of San Francisco's offensive line is the interior, where you're relying on Aaron Banks, Jake Brendel, and Dominic Pooney. That's right where you're going to see Quinn and Williams line up. I don't think the tackles are quite as bad. Trent Williams, you already mentioned. Hopefully he's in shape off the holdout. McKivitz, I think, is okay at the other end. But man, they're going to need to do something about Quinn and Williams, and I'm not sure they have the bodies that can hold up in there.
You think they can blow him up in the middle?
I think they could. Man, Quinn and Williams is so good.
He's amazing. This team, I mean, how many, if you're a football guy, if you love football like us, how many household names, again, a household that likes football, are on this defense for the Jets? It's crazy.
Yeah, you definitely need to be a household that likes football to know the defensive studs. But yeah, Quinn and Williams, Sauce Gardner have got to be two of the more famous defensive NFL players in the NFL.
Reed is nasty though too.
Yeah, he is.
Like their 1-2 punch is crazy. So yeah, they've got some guys. Anyway, that's what. Yeah, I like either defense here. I'm not really opposed to getting to at all. I could see this being a low scoring game. Plus, it's week 1. That game last night. Rams never play their starters in the preseason. This. Remember, they play one quarterback sometimes for all 60 minutes in every single preseason game.
It's pretty fun. I missed when it was like Bryce Perkins and not some of the dust they've been playing recently.
Dude, Perkins is exactly who I was referring to. Perkins played every snap in the preseason in 2021. Every snap.
He can run too, so it was fun when it happened.
Oh, who was it this year? Stetson Bennett.
Yeah, he's dusty.
Got picked off 4 times in his first game. Yeah, that was bad. But I suppose no one wants to hear us talk about preseason backup.
I mean, shout out to Todd Monken for getting a national championship out of that guy.
Did he?
Yeah.
I don't follow college like you do. I don't even. How is that? Oh yeah, right. That's right. He was actually like, but was he ever good in college or was he just on a good team?
Stetson?
Yeah. Was he good in college or was he just on a good team?
I mean, he had good numbers, but he's basically playing with an NFL roster in college football. So it's very hard to say. I mean, you can put pretty bad quarterbacks. Like he was a walk-on. So you can throw some pretty bad quarterbacks into Georgia's situation and probably look pretty good. So it's hard to separate his individual talent from those around him. But early returns seem to suggest that it was more so the supporting cast.
How about kickers today?
Kickers are looking a little better than normal in our projections. And I think that's largely because we have a lot of rotating from the players that are occupying the wide receiver 3 spots. We don't have a lot of like backup running back equity because we have 2 of the best workloads in the entire NFL. So I think kickers are a pretty solid play just because they're going to give you steady production and they allow you to get up to the more expensive guys. Whereas like no one would be surprised if you took a 0 from like Corley or something.
I'm looking at the sim results right now. I just favorited 150 lineups. Highest owned captain is McCaffrey. 10% Jake Moody as well. And 5% Greg Zuerlein. So there is some kicker captain. I'm I'm a little, I might boost Jets D a little bit in this spot. I tend to think that this defense is good to the point where like you might be seeing them just put up insane showdown scores at times. I know it's a tougher matchup for sure, but I have some, and you know what it is too. How do you anticipate a defense, no matter how good they were last year? How do you expect them to hold up across 4 quarters every game when they're on the field for the entirety of the game? That can't be overstated. How teams get tired, and how, as a defense, when you're on the field I bet if you looked at time of possession last year, the Jets' time of possession was awful. That had to have been, right? Like, had to have been.
Yeah, there's no way they were good at time of possession.
Let's see. Their time of possession last year ranked 25th.
That's higher than I thought.
Me too, dude. You wanted Seattle was dead last, but also I also think when you talk time of possession, there's a difference between time of possession when you're a run and gun offense that can go up by a ton of points early and a team that's just constantly never putting points on the board.
For sure, there's definitely some nuance to time of possession. The kind of offense I think should be factored in some way, but that's very hard to do.
Yeah, and I'm not saying again, I'm just saying I think the Jets defense will be a lot fresher game by game as they were last year.
They definitely should be.
You want to break down
longer drives.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, before we build a lineup, 2 questions for you. One, are there any cheap options for New York that we didn't mention yet?
I don't think so. I'm not getting to Ruckert or anything really behind Conklin. I don't think Braylon Allen is anything but a handcuff to Breece Hall right now. Maybe you could throw like a dart on him in the biggest of fields, but that's about it.
Yeah, I don't want to do it. I bet I had a pretty sizable play on Blake Corum under rushing yards yesterday, and he never even saw the field. And I think, I think people with, I was wondering if certain books weren't going to pay it out. Honestly, I don't know if he played
active.
He was active, but I wasn't sure they were going to try and sneak in like, oh, he has to have a snap. But
I mean, most do have that stipulation. Did he have a snap?
What?
Did he have a snap?
I don't know. I never saw him. And Ronnie Rivers got out there. I don't know. But I guess what I'm getting at, Matt, is when you look at these rookie running backs that aren't the Bijan Robinsons and the Barkleys and the Elliots drafted really early, the Breece Halls, it sometimes takes some time. And like you saw Trey Benson, his under hit on rushing yards. You saw Ray Davis, his under hit on rushing yards. Blake Corum never even got on the field, just to name 3 yesterday. So I have some reservations with Braylon Allen. I have actually no interest there, and I actually think he's overpriced. I think he should be minimum salary.
Yeah, I would agree. I think he's overpriced too.
All right, let's break down the skill players for San Francisco. I don't think that we have to say a ton about McCaffrey, right? Like he's always going to be one of the best plays, one of the best captain plays, flex plays. Play him wherever you want. If you have anything to add there, feel free to do so. But I want to get into the weeds a little bit with the other guys on San Francisco.
Yeah, we absolutely should. If there's any analysis I have on McCaffrey right now, it's that at our projected ownership, this suggests to me that people are getting too cute and they should be playing more McCaffrey. Right now, it looks like he has a chance to go potentially a little bit under-owned compared to where he's being projected from a fantasy point perspective. So it's Lamar Jackson situation. Don't fade him. Where do you want to play him is the question.
Right. And I don't think it's imperative that you play him at captain, but I will say he is currently, and I'll run these again, my highest exposed captain right now. What about you when you ran it?
Same.
Yeah, by a wide margin.
Got 35%. Second was Garrett Wilson, just shy of 12.
Okay. I got 39%. Second was Breece Hall at 10%. Jordan, what do we have?
Breece Hall was third.
Okay, what do we have at captain? You don't even need to filter by it anymore. We have those up there. So you're not in, are you on exposure? Yeah, you are. McCaffrey at 33. Okay. And then Debo at, what is that, 12 or something? Garrett Wilson at 10. Okay. Yeah, Brees Hall. So pretty similar. Talk to me about the rest of the San Francisco 49ers team.
This is going to be the ownership game for me as well. If we start to see all of the ownership creep towards McCaffrey, Brees, and Garrett Wilson, that's where I'm going to start having more interest in Deebo Samuel and Ayuk. Both their target shares are also pretty good. The offense flows a little bit more through McCaffrey. So even with that said, more mouths to feed makes it a little more volatile, but these are two elite receivers with elite upside. I want to get pieces of them, and I'm just going to play the ownership game. As soon as these guys start creeping lower and lower, that's where I'll start to play more of them in this offense. Would expect a big ceiling from at least one. Usually the problem is figuring out who that's going to be, and I don't have a good read on that. Usually don't week to week.
I don't either.
I typically side with Deebo regardless of like any sort of matchup. Deebo just has more ways to win and get to a ceiling than Ayuk, so I typically would prefer Deebo. But again, Ayuk is an elite player. He's just used more conventionally. Deebo, they use him in so many ways.
There are definitely more outs with Deebo, for sure. For sure. But at the same time, yeah, Ayuk is damn good. And you also have George Kittle. You were talking about Kittle earlier. What's so tough about him is the volume with George Kittle is so unpredictable. I mean, he could have 2 targets today and you wouldn't be surprised. He could have 9 and you wouldn't be surprised. Do you think possibly, though, that this is the type of game? How good are the Jets linebackers?
The Jets are definitely strong in their linebacking core. You know, like CJ Mosley, Quincy Williams. It's a pretty good group. I don't know if you would consider them like elite, but I think they're pretty good. Not as good as the 49ers, but.
Right. Do you think this is possibly a spot where they look to get Kittle the ball more? Or maybe a spot where they look to get Deebo the ball more on, these unique type of plays they draw up where, you're kind of mitigating the stickiness of those corners in Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed?
To be honest with you, I'm a little worried about Kittle having to pass block at times.
Yeah,
if his defensive line actually is going to get pressure. And I think, again, the best part of the Jets pass rush comes from the interior. So maybe this is a non-point, but Kittle is a very good pass blocker, and we see this in certain matchups. It's at least a concern, whereas Deebo and Ayuk are not pass blocking. Sometimes Kittle does. So that's at least a concern for me.
Yeah, it's a good point. The thing about Kittle is that he could have 3 fantasy points or 30, like any given week.
Yep, that's how his box scores go.
Yep. And I'm okay with that. Like I'm not going to sit here and act like I never want to get to George Kittle. In showdown slates, I am always more than willing to get to George Kittle because you're always going to get him cheaper than Deebo and cheaper than Ayuk. So while I don't disagree with you at all that they may keep him into block, he's also just he's an enigma. You don't know what you're getting from Kittle ever. And that, to me, is worth getting to. So I like all of these guys. I think it'd still be Deebo first, then Kittle and Ayuk because I'll take the savings, but they're all fantastic. I do probably like Kittle a little bit more than you do, given the volatility. I want to embrace that. But man, once you get down lower, Jauan Jennings isn't dirt cheap. Is there anybody even worthwhile down here?
For the 49ers, I don't think so. I'm with you on Kittle. Usually my favorite time to play him is after he's rattled off 2 30-yard games in a row and his price drops to 6.4K and everyone's scared that he's never going to produce again, knowing full well that he's had a full career of these kind of stretches and then he goes off for a 30-point game. He's at 7.4 today, which is a little expensive for my liking. I'd rather just find the salary to get to Ayuk or Deebo for the security and then wait till Kittle has a 6.4 price tag at some point this year. As far as the depths of this team, I mean, there's almost no one in play. I'm probably just going to cut it off at the kickers. Maybe a sprinkling of Jauan Jennings, but this team runs 11 personnel at one of the lowest rates in the league. And it's not just double tight end. They have Juszczyk, who's not really usable for DFS. This isn't the Super Bowl, so you can't really play him. And
That's your favorite Super Bowl bet.
dude, for whatever reason, Shanahan has some sort of involvement for Kyle Juszczyk. The guy has like 2 touches all season long, and then in the Super Bowl, he gets like 4.
Yeah.
It's the weirdest thing. But yeah,
I'd
that
rather
hurts Jennings too.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I'd rather target the cheap options from the Jets over the 49ers today, I think.
Honestly, my favorite cheap option for the Niners is Jordan Mason. And I don't feel good about it.
Oh, I don't hate it.
I just think back to the early Eli Mitchell days when they would spell Christian McCaffrey a little more often, especially early in the season. Could that happen with Jordan Mason?
I think
Maybe.
I think you might be on to something. And Christian McCaffrey, while they're saying he's all systems go, he was dealing with an injury. He was a little banged up. And yes, to your point, early in the season, there are going to be some times where Christian McCaffrey might get spelled a little bit. Now, if I remember correctly, wasn't it last year in week 1 where Shanahan was like, yeah, I need to get Mitchell more involved, because I don't think he saw like a single touch in week 1. No, he did. It was against Minnesota. It was one of those games where he just got nothing. And for some reason, Shanahan was intent on getting him more work. But yeah, in weeks 1 and it was week 2. Week 2, he wasn't even out there. But yeah, week 1, he had 5 carries and a target. I'll put it to you this way. There's nothing that excites me about Jordan Mason, but if it was between him and if it were between him, I'd probably go there over Allen. Braylon over Braylon Allen.
I think there's more chance for opportunity aside from injuries and whatnot. Just like standalone opportunity, I think of the backup running backs, he's the best option.
I'm with you. Michael, what's up, brother? Shout out for you. Thank you for the super chat. He said, with no Pearsall, I'm doing a dart throw at Cowing. What do you think about that?
I don't know if he's going to be active. I would look closely because I think they're probably going to have Conley active. And then I've been kind of debating if they're going to have Ronnie Bell or Cowing out there. And I don't know. I truly don't know. One of them I think is inactive today, but Conley gives you a little bit on special teams.
Last year, Ronnie Bell was actually optimal in a showdown slate when he scored.
Was that on a slate where Conley was hurt? Because Conley was in and out of the lineup a little bit.
I believe it was. And I forget who else was hurt. I know this much. It was against the New York Giants. And they smoked them. It was against the Giants. I'm actually looking at it right now. 2 for 24 and a touchdown. But
I like these backup receivers. I like Ronnie Bell and I like Cowing.
They're so difficult to figure out, though.
I just don't know who's going to be active.
Me neither. Okay, so we find out an hour and a half before kickoff that Ronnie Bell is active, or that he isn't and Cowing is active. They're both minimum salary. Would you be willing to sprinkle on one?
It's a milli maker pass.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're hoping really for like 1 15-yard reception that goes for a touchdown. There's no volume there at all. No volume to speak of.
It's kind of like Jawan Jennings. Like, this team is going to run 11 personnel and one of the lowest rates in the league, and Ayuk and Debo aren't coming off the field. So like that hurts Jennings. And now, like, are we pulling Jennings off the field for one of these guys? I'm not sure.
Yeah. All right. You want to build a lineup here?
Yeah, let's do it.
So I'm thinking, you love Breece Hall. I love Breece Hall. Do we just kick it off with Breece Hall captain?
No problem with that. Love Breece Hall.
Let's do it. Breece Hall at captain. By the way, we're using the single lineup sim. We're had a lot of fun with this tool. $1, by the way, last time this promo is active, $1 for everything, every tool we have tonight for NFL. Massive, massive prize pools as well. And our showdown tools have absolutely crushed. So if you want in, link in the description and in the chat. Breece Hall, captain, gives us just under 7K remaining per player. You know what, Matt? I'm just going to I'm going to see what happens if we throw McCaffrey in there. We're going to experiment here.
I think you have to do that. So
Me
I
too.
have no issues with that whatsoever. That significantly brings down our salary. So I'll take what I think is the cheapest secure player in Tyler Conklin.
Okay. I like that. Uh, Jets D.
Jets defense. Okay. 3,200. Wow. We still have nearly 8,200 left per player.
Yep.
If we throw in Garrett Wilson, we're going to be in no man's land, aren't we? We're going to be backup QB range. That's
yeah,
the
the
worst place
dreaded
to be.
backup QB range.
Ah, okay.
That's exactly where we land, unless we wanted to go. Well, I mean, you could just leave salary and go Moody and Greg the Leg or 49ers D or something like that, which I don't think is insane. But
Would you prefer that, or would you prefer like Ayuk and a Mike Williams, George Kittle type?
oh, probably that. But then we don't have any quarterbacks. So like, if so, wait, are you saying? By the way, I just simmed it with Jake Moody in there and Garrett Wilson. 37% simmed ROI.
Oh, let's not change it then. Well, I'm getting
That's
too
not
cute and out thinking myself.
that's not bad. Let me do it in large field. I did it in a small field. Let's see what happens if is it better or worse in a large field? Let's see. It comes out at, let's see, better or worse? 9.7. So this appears to be more of a better small field lineup.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. There's like the three highest projected players, so
Yeah,
probably the three highest owned. It has the chalk value piece. I don't know. We did the Jets and a kicker though, so that's a little surprising still.
I thought so too. I guess not. You want to try it the way you said? So if we have two left, what were you thinking?
It was like Ayuk, and then you could either do Kittle or Mike Williams.
Let's go. How are we projecting Mike Williams? Not great at that price at all. Like he's probably really negatively leveraged, isn't he?
Yes, he is. But Kittle's not.
No, he's not. Let's try it. I have a feeling the other one's going to be better.
I have a feeling too after you said that. I wouldn't have thought so at first, but I do think you're right now.
-6.
1 for the Sims, 0 for Matt's intuition.
let's try one more and then we'll get out of here for the morning. And appreciate you guys hanging out. Tap that thumbs up if you haven't done so yet. Oh, we're almost at 250. All right. All right. Almost at 250. I didn't think we'd get there. Good shit. Thanks, guys. Jordan, are you in large field or small field? What do you have? All right, do large field 10% to first. And Matt, now we're going to build one more. So this is going to be like single entry style, large field, single entry style, where they pay out 10% to first. You go captain here.
Okay, so we got a little bit of a flatter payout. I'll do Garrett Wilson.
Love that. I almost want to throw Rodgers in and see what happens if we try a build like this.
I think we absolutely can.
Let's try it. Let's go Rodgers here.
The thing is, you're going to leave out somebody you like. It's just what happens on these showdown slates with so many studs. I'm going to throw McCaffrey in, just hard to get away from him really at any level.
I was going to say that this build, you could just see it leading to a Breece Hall fade at this point. That's pretty much where the direction we're heading in, you know?
Yes.
All right. Give me. I'm going to go Jake Moody here. I think Jake Moody's a nice play today.
I like Jake Moody a lot. That puts us just shy of 5K for 2 remaining players.
Can we punt something that'll get us where we want to go? I think we're going to end up in no man's land if we go Conklin.
I agree. Let's go Lazard.
Oh, can that get us to Kittle?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Let's see. This is going to be bad, but I love it. That's the problem here. I like this better than the last one. 24%, 23.9.
That's not so bad.
Not terrible. No, I mean, we could definitely get some better ones, but okay, we're 2 of 3. We're 2 of 3 on positive simmed ROI for this one.
Let's go.
Hey, follow Matt at Matt_Gajewski if you're not doing so yet over on X. Follow me at Laffy_D. Einstein, we'll close on this because Einsteinium asked some good questions, Matt. One earlier, he was saying, like, what do you think could be kind of a game script that plays out that isn't what we expected? And he said, now, what if a greasy game script? What would a greasy game script look like if we build it out, Laffy? For me, and then I want Matt's thoughts. For me, it's defenses, kickers, and I'm not saying everything together, and all of the skill players still, just not the quarterbacks as much. Like I could still see optimal games from a McCaffrey because of how involved, from a Breece Hall, from the volume on Garrett Wilson. But I could see the quarterbacks because they're not mobile, not getting there.
This is a really hard question to answer because I think the avenues of least resistance for both offenses come through the air. If I was to poke a hole in both defenses, it would be the secondary for each team. But the two running backs are going to be extremely owned due to their workloads. So you have these two sort of diverging ideas, and I'm not sure what to do with them. I think I'm largely going to just use ownership as my tiebreakers. If the field is overconfident that one thing happens versus the other, then I probably will just divert myself. But to answer his question, is like a greasy game, almost like a shootout between both passing offenses with the QBs and the receivers, just because we're expecting so much from McCaffrey and Breece. I don't know. Like maybe the greasiness is just like the outcome we don't expect.
Yeah, it's very possible. It's a tough question to answer.
Yeah,
Hey,
it's
thanks,
tough when there's
guys.
so much talent on both sides of the ball.
Exactly. Yeah, for both teams, all 4 sides of the game, both defense, both offense. It's a tough game. It's going to be a great game now. I'm very much looking forward to it. We'll close out the week with this live before lock. Greg Ehrenberg and myself tonight. If you're still playing baseball, MLB live before lock, and before that. And as always, like I said, $1 for everything tonight down there in the description. And Jordan can throw it in chat one more time. Rock that avatar, baby. Stochastic.com/HOF. Get paid. And we'll see you back here for the next one. Peace.